Did you know that even in his early writing career, this guy was dropping some serious A-bombs? Welcome, dear bookworm. This is Vasil, the backwater librarian, the booktuber who helps you rediscover little dark gems from old-school weird fiction. Today we'll be taking a deep and delightful dive in one of H.P. Lovecraft's earlier short stories bearing the intriguing title Beyond the Wall of Sleep. This time I've decided to try a faceless video, but will give my best to make it entertaining for you nonetheless. I'll be gradually laying out the plot in its entirety as the video progresses, so you can stop now if you'd prefer to read the story first. There's a link in the description where you can download the ebook or simply read it in your browser. Otherwise, you're welcome to stay and I'll gladly guide you through it, start to finish. By the way, if you find my accent too thick, a full English transcript is available, as well as correct subtitles in at least a couple of other languages. With that out of the way, let's dive directly into the story. Beyond the Wall of Sleep was first published in 1919, and it recounts the strange experiences of a young intern in an unnamed New England psychiatric institution. The story is told in first person, our unnamed narrator being the young intern himself. It starts with a theoretical, reflective passage about how some dreams may show a glimpse into a different, grander and more exalted plane of existence, much different from our corporeal everyday experience. I really like this sort of theoretical openings to Lovecraft stories, the most famous and potent one being, of course, that harrowing initial passage from The Call of Cthulhu. But even this one, in such an early story, is still very strong, and it successfully sets the tone for the whole plot. As to the unnamed first-person narrator, it is clear that Lovecraft was, at least in part, envisioning himself, a tactic which he went on to employ in his later works as well. The catalyst for the plot is the arrival of a criminally insane patient into the institution's custody during the winter of 1900 to 1901. His name is Joe Slater, a man of about 40 from the rather isolated and primitive Catskill mountain region, who used to be a vagabond, hunter and a trapper, a man with limited means and an even more limited intellect. The denizens of the Catskill region, Lovecraft tells us, are of old colonial stock, but have degraded over time due to the isolation of their vast hilly county. They're basically the northern equivalent of what in the south is referred to as white trash. Yes, he actually uses that literal phrase. And law and morals seem to be non-existent among them. Joe Slater is a typical representative of this decadent milieu, with one notable exception. Ever since people remember him, he's had the strange habit of speaking some very weird things after waking up. In a poor vernacular, unsuitable for the complex vistas and feelings he tried to convey, he would relate his terrifying and wondrous dreams of vast valleys and spaces filled with strange lights and odd music. There would also be talk of a mighty and bizarre adversary populating these otherworldly realms, who had apparently done him some sort of injustice and against whom he would swear vengeance. After babbling away for usually an hour at a time, Joe Slater, having genuinely scared both his listeners and himself, would suddenly stop and soon after forget the whole ordeal and go back to his simple, degraded everyday life. As time went on, though, it seems that these strange episodes gained in both frequency and violence until one fateful day, after a heavy, drunken sleep, Joe woke up in an exceptionally agitated and frenzied mood. He immediately started leaping upwards and shouting that he must reach some big cabin filled with brightness and loud queer music far away. He was vowing to burn his way through anything that tries to stop him in finding and killing a certain thing that shines and shakes and laughs. When two neighbors tried to restrain him, one of them got knocked out and the other one sadly killed. At this point, Joe Slater finally got in the crosshairs of the authorities, was apprehended, and after a brief trial, found mentally insane and committed to the aforementioned psychiatric institution. Phew, we've got a lot to unpack here. First off, the theme of degraded or even degenerate individuals, families, or as in this story, entire communities, is one we encounter often in Lovecraft's writings. This degradation can, in some cases, be due to an actual biological taint in the bloodline, while in others, to external, socio-historical factors. I can think of at least two reasons for the prevalence of this theme. Firstly, Lovecraft himself grew up in a family of physically and mentally degraded parents, and was anxious throughout his life that their illnesses could manifest in him as well. And secondly, he was the type of person who highly valued the principles of reading, learning, sensitivity, civility, and good manners. Thus, he held a disdain for any form of uncouth lifestyle which neglected these principles and which instead focused solely on satisfying the base animalistic urges of man, oftentimes at the expense of the fellow human. So, wherever that type of lifestyle prevailed, Lovecraft regarded those communities as degraded, degenerate, decayed. You know what's funny? The more I live on this eldritch earth, the more I realize how right he was in some aspects. I had the misfortune of living for a year in Sofia's infamous district of Lulin. For those of you Bulgarians out there, this will certainly ring a bell. I apologize up front to the few genuinely kind and considerate citizens of this district for what I am about to say, but the majority of the people there are really the worst of what Sofia has to offer. Ill-mannered, inconsiderate, loud, rowdy, oftentimes veritable drunkards and ruffians. They have little to no cultivation nor higher goals, living to simply satisfy their crude needs and ignoble desires. So, not unlike the denizens of Catskill Mountain, the people of Lulin have, in general, slipped back into their own form of barbarism, have degraded as a community. That's enough on this topic for now. However, I'd like to hear if you've had a similar experience within your home country. Then we have the first glimpse into the main plot line, the reason for the seeming insanity of Joe Slater. I like the way Lovecraft introduces us slowly into the mystery, presenting to us first the external, objective observation of Slater's behavior. The reader is left intrigued and amazed. How come has this simpleton Slater been repeatedly experiencing these vivid, elaborate, and, above all, bizarre dreams? Had he been a sensitive man of reading and imagination, they could have been explained away as a product of his agitated fancy. But how could they possibly show up in the subconscious of an illiterate, unimaginative man? Could there be some deeper, more terrifying reason behind them? I have to admit that the first time I read this story and came across the description of Slater's dreams, I had a genuine sense of eeriness and unease. I got goosebumps galore when he mentioned how he would soar through abysses of emptiness, burning every obstacle that stood in his way in order to reach the archenemy of his dreams. I knew that something was clearly amiss here and that I'd be in for one hell of a revelation. The story progresses and the young intern of ours, sensing clearly there's something terribly off about his new patient's dreams, decides to get to the bottom of it. Slater continues having them at the psychiatric ward as well, and while the more senior doctors remain skeptical or indifferent, the intern tries to squeeze as much information from Slater as possible. This proves not an exactly easy task due to Slater's limited intellect and poor vocabulary. Nevertheless, the intern manages to gather that in his strange dreams, Slater has a nigh out-of-body experience and is no more his degraded self but a creature of importance and vivid life, a non-human, luminous thing which freely flows through resplendent and prodigious valleys, meadows, gardens, cities, and palaces of light in a region utterly unknown to man. This seemingly idyllic existence is, however, badly spoiled by a single calamity: the omnipresence of a mocking adversary. A luminous thing like himself, which had done him some terrible but unnamed wrong, he now desperately wishes to avenge. The intern is understandably puzzled by these findings and begins to suspect that there exists an utterly unknown and alien entity, a kind of a dream soul which inhabits the inferior body of Joe Slater, the simple Catskill Mountain trapper, and which can manifest itself only while its bodily host is not actively conscious. Determined to peek behind the veil of mystery and further compelled to action by Slater's deteriorating health, the young intern remembers that he had concocted an experimental device for mind reading for the purposes of an earlier experiment. How convenient, huh?
Easy!
It is a transmit and receive apparatus, similar to the wireless telegraphs of the time. He goes on to fine-tune it a bit, and then, every night, Slater looks like having one of his dreams. The intern fits the transmitter module on the sleeper's forehead while putting the receiver module on his own, hoping to receive direct thought impressions from Slater's dream world. What can I say about these developments? At this point of the story, we're deep into the mystery and it seems need only the last piece of the puzzle in order to decipher it. What will the true reason behind Slater's bizarre dreams turn out to be? Is there still a possibility for a rather conventional explanation? The delirious ravings of a lunatic? Or does there exist a real entity, no matter how strange, manifesting itself on the other side of the wall of sleep? If so, what is its nature? A shape-shifting alien? A being of pure energy, or something altogether unknown? Well, we're bound to get some answers in the upcoming final third of the story. Before proceeding to the story's finale, however, I'd like to point out Lovecraft's well-utilized concept of individuals inventing mechanical and/or electrical devices in order to either peek into other dimensions, as for example in From Beyond, or fight a supernatural adversary as in The Shunned House. Lovecraft usually gives us a quasi-scientific explanation as to how the machine is supposed to work, and then it is used to further the plot. Although such appliances are far from probable in real life, I find this concept actually quite cute, having in mind the transcendent main themes of his stories and that this is fiction after all. I readily give him a pass for a scientific inaccuracy or two. A similar, though separate conception would be the host of fantastical alien-made apparatus, the likes of which appear in The Whisperer in Darkness, The Shadow Out of Time, or At the Mountains of Madness, to name a few. In these instances, he has the advantage of chalking them up to the superior alien science and technology, although he does give a few explanations as to their functioning here and there. Finally, let's see how this story ends. The breakthrough comes on the night of 21st of February 1901. Securing the telegraph-like device to the eel weekend Slater and to himself, the intern falls asleep, like on any other uneventful night. This time around, however, he's aroused by weird lyric melody and overwhelming sights of architectural and natural beauty. Grand, elegant buildings weirdly reminiscent of ancient Greek temples. You can tell HPL's fascination with ancient Greece, intertwined with vast plains and valleys, high mountains and inviting grottos. Floating through this magnificent scenery, the intern, or rather his dream self, meets the light being that has been inhabiting the body of Joe Slater. It greets him as its equal and confirms that it's about to break free from its earthbound corporeal bondage and wreak vengeance on its detested cosmic adversary. At this junction, it becomes clear that Slater's weakened psyche and physique can't sustain the dream-bound communication any longer, and the intern lapses back into the waking world, much to his chagrin. He's determined, however, to make one final push, and so he resets the device in an attempt to squeeze out one final message from the dream world. Slater opens his eyes, but from the look of them it is clear that not he, but the light being is looking through them. It establishes a telepathic connection with the intern and delivers a final monologue. It reveals that for the last 42 terrestrial years it has been trapped in the inferior body of Joe Slater, but now that it's finally breaking free, it will exact its long yearned for revenge against its cosmic oppressor, who, it reveals, is no other than the celestial body we humans know as Algol, the demon star. It instructs the intern that he'll soon be able to observe its act of vengeance in the sky near Algol. It would then seek another bodily host, human or alien, in the past or in the future. It implies that the same is true for the intern's dream self, and that they'd possibly meet again as old acquaintances somewhere in the space-time continuum. The telepathic transmission ends, the intern realizing Joe Slater has now definitely passed away. The next day, the intern confides the whole ordeal to his superior, but he declares it a fancy of the intern's overworked nerves and assigns him 6 months of paid leave. Gee, I wish someone could do the same to me at my company. But that's still not the end of the story. The following night, the intern, as instructed, observes the sky, and lo and behold, there comes the irrefutable proof that this entire strange experience had been real to the last dot. For there appears a hitherto unknown nova violently pulsating in the vicinity of Algol. What an ending, you guys! Can we just stop and appreciate Lovecraft's genius for a moment? The nova mentioned here is an actual exploding star called J.K. Persei by the astronomical community, first spotted on the 22nd of February 1901. We know HPL had love for astronomy since boyhood, so this actual event must have lingered in the back of his mind till he came to the idea to write a fictional short story related to it. And what an awesome story it is! I really like the themes Lovecraft delves into here. The idea that there might be other, grander levels of existence altogether different from this banal, corporeal one. The notion that in every one of us, or maybe usually in the sensitive among us, the story doesn't make it clear, there resides another, cosmic personality of astral power and magnitude, and consequently the concept of celestial stars as sentient beings. The overarching sense of cosmic mystery and awe pervading the entire narrative. So, where does this story fit within Lovecraft's fiction? Well, it is simply a standalone early story of his, neither falling within the dream cycle nor strictly taken within the wider Cthulhu mythos. The language and narration can come across as a bit stiff, for example his use of weird phrases. I know he uses weird adjectives and phrases all the time, but here it is a bit more pronounced. Despite that, this story has all the bells and whistles of a potent Lovecraftian tale, albeit in a cruder form. A theoretical opening passage, a tense main plot against the backdrop of cosmic horrors and wonders, a killer ending with a final revelation in the very last paragraph. This story was definitely a sign of greater things to come. Just to give you an example, the uncanny notion of alien beings projecting their consciousness backward and forward in space, but also in time, crudely presented in this story, is expanded upon and polished later in The Shadow Out of Time, one of his core Cthulhu mythos stories. You've noticed by now that I have a soft spot for this story. I don't know what it is. The intriguing premise, the sympathy I get to feel for poor Joe Slater, the figuratively and literally explosive ending, or all of that together. But this story has grown on me. My final verdict, 4.5 stars out of 5. That's it for today, guys. I'd absolutely love to hear from you in the comments. How do you find this earlier Lovecraft story and my humble commentary on it? Would you like me to make a similar video for a particular story of his? And if you've enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you'd drop a like and subscribe. And remember, the Backwater Librarian guides you through the obscure pathways of literature. Thank you for watching and pleasant reading.